Hi guys, this is Zamang here and welcome to today's video. As the title suggests, I would like to talk about my experience applying for and being matched with a guide dog as of 2026. So without further ado, let's get started. To begin with, I think it's important to talk about the pre-application work you need to do in order to qualify for even getting a guide dog in the UK. And to do that, you need really good orientation and mobility skills for one. And they need to, feel that you can take care of a dog and that it fits well into your daily life and routine. They want you to have at least 3 fairly decent length routes that you can do on your own with a white cane or whatever mobility aid you use to show that you can manage without the dog, it sounds counterproductive to people who don't really know the process. Because, if you're getting a dog, you don't really need cane skills, which is a big myth because, if your dog gets sick or if they have to go into early retirement or even when they do retire, you'll be stranded and you can't do anything on your own without the dog if you don't have good O&M. Or even, dogs can't really, it's a myth, again, that dogs know the routes that you're doing, so they guide you directly to it. You're the one who's supposed to, tell them where to go. They can guide you around obstacles, but they don't, they can learn routes through repetition or long-term practice. But even then, you need to know where you are. So if you don't have good O&M skills, you could get easily lost or turned around, in which case, you're kind of screwed. Anyway, to show you have your good O&M skills, you need to pass your assessment, which is basically when your guide dog mobility specialist kind of watches you do a route. Or 2, depending. I think they're not really choosy about which ones you do, so you could probably do one that is easier for you, but anyway, I took my assessment and passed it in September of 2024, and I was on the waiting list by October of 2024. They like to put you into a case review to talk about, everything with their team, just to confirm that everyone is in agreement that you can kind of proceed with your application. But anyway, after the assessment, you're on the waiting list, and usually a guide dog trainer comes to visit you. They let you kind of look at the guide dog harness, they teach you some commands. If you're lucky, they'll have a ready trained guide dog with them, or training guide dog who's about to go to their actual owner. So you can see what it's like to walk with one. If you're not lucky, then you have a human on the other end of the harness and you're walking down the street issuing guide dog commands, with very high-pitched voice to a human. Not the best for your own dignity, but I bet your neighbors would love that. Anyway, I was among the lucky group and I had a trainee guide dog come with the trainer. His name was Spinky, and I think it was a lab of some description. So they come with you. You get to kind of practice putting on a harness on this life-sized or almost life-sized stuffed dog before you're allowed near the actual dog. They go over your health, your medical kind of history, if you have any. They look at your house to see if it's suitable for a dog. Check who you live with, so they can find a dog. For example, if you have siblings or young kids, the dog needs to handle that, or if you have other pets, for example. And after all of that, it's a pretty lengthy discussion. They, ask if you have any preferences, breed, and, color, for example. Although that's not, you shouldn't really have preferences of that kind because it would limit it would make your wait even longer than it already is. Obviously, if you have allergies or something like that, they can give you a dog who is hypoallergenic. But again, the more requirements you have, the longer you need to wait for the right dog to come up. Because, if the right dog, personality-wise, came up and he was, for example, brown and you wanted a purely black dog, that would be quite bad, obviously, because they would go to someone else. Anyway, they also talk about what your workload for the dog would be. For example, in my case, I was still in high school at the time, but when I got the dog, I would be in university as I am now. So the dog would have, routes between classes, possibly a commute from home to university itself in the mornings and in the afternoons, you need to go home. And they would need to be able to be quite chill and just lie, under a desk in a lecture for a while without, disrupting things. So then the trainer takes all of the information that they gathered from your chat back to, I think, their team, just to talk about it and make sure you're still okay to continue with the waiting list process, and you're officially on the waiting list. During the wait, you can take part in some taster days where you learn to take care of the dog or get to walk a few other guide dogs, just to keep your skills up for when you do get matched with the dog. In my case, I'm in Scotland, and I don't know how common they were, but I never got anything about that. I didn't email them, but because I didn't want to, be too pushy or whatever, and I had, school and finishing high school to deal with, so it wasn't obviously I would have loved for it to happen as soon as possible, but it wasn't the only thing I could focus on. Anyway, you're on the waiting list, you wait. The wait time depends. It could be very, very quick, as in, months, or it could take years. The average right now is, I think it's 16 or 18 months, I can't remember. For me, I've been on for 19 months, and I got a call on Tuesday saying that they found me a match, so we'll go on to that later on in the video. So when they have found you a possible match, the guide dog trainer who is training the dog gives you a call. They tell you about the dog's personality, temperament, and answer your questions if you have any, and they book in a matching visit. Usually it's for pretty soon. I got the call on Tuesday and my matching visit was on Thursday. They bring the dog along, you can say hi, have a little fuss of the dog. They, come into your house, make sure everything's still okay for the dog to be here. Maybe have my trainer, she looked at toileting, see if there was a good place for that in my garden. And then you do a harness walk to check for walking pace and see how well you match there. They like to have several handles with them, and they'll try you on maybe a middle-sized handle to begin with, and either size up or down from that. I'm quite tall. I don't know if you can tell that from the camera, but it meant that they needed a longer handle, which is kind of counterintuitive, you would think, because the longer the handle, you would think the further away from the dog you are. You would think a shorter handle, that you get closer, but in actual fact, it gives you more kind of wiggle room, so you can move it as you would like, so that your arm isn't getting wrenched out of your socket. So I did the harness walk. It was actually really interesting. I would say that my mobility definitely has increased, or improved rather, since I've been on the waiting list, because I'm in university now. Although I'm still local, I travel around more on my own. I can meet up with friends in town, which I didn't really need to do when I was in school, obviously. But I feel like it's a very different experience walking with a cane and walking with a dog. In a sense, you have more freedom because you can walk faster and you don't find a lot of the obstacles that you would normally walk into, with your cane. But, on the other hand, for me at least, it felt quite insecure to begin with. I felt like I was, obviously when you do sighted guide, you're in quite close with the person, they're upright, so you can kind of feel them right next to you. Whereas with the dog, you're just holding onto a handle and you've got to keep it in alignment over their back, so that you're not pulling them off course or whatever. And then, you've got to be close to them, but not, really close. And for me, the worry was that I would accidentally step on this dog, and that would be awful, So that was something for me to get used to. We just did a short kind of walk around my neighborhood, looked at the commands I would be, using. Before we started, my trainer held the harness to begin with, inside, thankfully. And we went over the foot positions, the voice command, and the hand gesture. Most guiding commands in the UK have all three, so it's multiple opportunities for the dog to kind of see what you want and do it. I can probably make a more detailed video about that later on, but I think people have already done similar videos online, so you could probably find them if you're interested. Anyway, all of that went well, so I could proceed to the next stage in the matching process, which is the overnight stay. After the matching visit, they like to kind of, again, discuss with their team to make sure that they're all okay with, this matching process continuing. Some of them, I think most in fact, will record videos of you during your initial walk with the dog to make sure that they can look, check for your pace, check if you and the dog are both comfortable with each other. And yeah, once that's all go, they call you probably again or message, depending on your trainer, to arrange the overnight stay, which is when they leave the dog with you in the early late afternoon, after having told you everything you need to know about taking care of them for that night, and see how you get on with them, how they like your house, get on with the other people that you're living with, if you are living with anyone. And yeah, so for me, that's taking place next Wednesday. My situation is a bit different because I'm going on holiday with my family at the end of June, which was planned months in advance, obviously, because we didn't expect the dog to be coming here and now. Which, thinking back on it, like, of course it would. Like, generally, that's how it works. Like, the moment you don't expect something is the moment things will happen. So because of that, my training has had to, it will have had to be, like, broken up. I'll have some training before I go, and then we pick back up, as soon as I get back, really. Usually this would be, quite problematic because in the UK, guide dog training takes place over 5 weeks. The first 2 are residential kind of classes in a hotel, usually with other people getting their dogs at a similar time. But thankfully, in my case, it's obviously summer. The hotel that they use is all booked out, so the group of dogs my trainer is training this time are being trained from home, which gave me more flexibility. Anyway, all this is to say, after the overnight stay, they generally put you on a case review, and if the team is happy, then you get matched with this dog. Before training starts, you'll have another few walks with them, maybe some smaller training sessions, maybe a longer weekend stay sometimes with them, just to make sure that everything's still good. And then you would obviously begin training. In my case, I had quite a special opportunity. There was availability in an earlier hotel training class, so they have slotted me in to go there for a week with my dog, if all works well, to train in that setting, so I can get a crash course in what I need to do before possibly doing some more training from home, and then I head off and we start again. Anyway, that's pretty much my experience up until now with applying for and getting a guide dog in the UK. I hope this video was helpful. Sorry for the rambling and possibly dodgy camera angle. I will probably update again, after each following, thing that happens up until I eventually get a dog, whether it's this one or another one, depending on how things work out. Although most of those will probably be short form videos, so keep an eye out for that if you're interested. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!